I just bought a little flip minnow, which is an adorable mini camcorder. And I realized that there are times when I'm knitting, I could actually show someone how to do a technique just quickly, informally, because I'm already doing it. And I'm finishing a pair of big black socks for Soldiers, and I'm at the toes and I'm doing the Kitchener stitch. So I thought this is going to be a perfect time to show you something. Anyway, to start with, notice that I have got my two socks and I've moved both pairs. See, here's the big cord from my 40-inch magic loop, and I've moved both of my socks over to the end to the points of my needles, okay? So I'm going to just do one sock at a time, but what I've done is I've cut a rather long piece of the yarn because it's better to have it be too long than too short. I've threaded it through a nice little blunt needle. You notice I have my little affirmation marker at the end here. Anyway, let's talk about Kitchener stitch. What you want to do, it's very easy. Remember, the yarn is going to come when you start from the back needle on the right-hand side, okay? You bring the yarn under the front needle, simple enough, and then there's a little rhyme that's going to help you remember what you're doing. And the rhyme is knit one off, purl through, and it stays on, and you'll notice that when I do this, I do not pull my stitches tight. I go back and do that later so that I can make sure that I do it evenly. I leave them a little loose, okay? But then you move the yarn to the back under the needle tips, and on this one in the back, it's purl off, knit through. And don't worry, everything's going to be kind of loose, but that's just fine. Again, I just pull my yarn up, but I leave a little bit of a loop there. I don't pull it tight, okay? So then in the front, you move to the front again, making sure your yarn is going under the needle tip, not over it, under the needle tips, and you knit off, purl through, purl off, knit through. Keep it all nice and loose. See, look, it looks kind of sloppy in there. You've got all this loose stuff. That's just fine. Knit off, purl through, keep it kind of sloppy and underneath the needle tips. No worries. And then you purl off, knit through. Not a problem. So just continue on here, keeping your yarn nice and loose, and you knit off, purl through, purl off in the back, knit through. And you use your fingers to keep the knit through or purl through stitches from slipping off the tips of the needles. I know they're kind of close to those tips, and sometimes you can do that. Again, keep everything loose. Okay, now we're down to the last two stitches on each of the needles. Sometimes this makes people panic, but it's really okay. Don't worry about it. What you're going to do is the same thing, the same pattern. Knit off, purl through on the front needle, and just leave that one stitch there. On the back needle, purl off, knit through, and leave that stitch there. And then you're going to finish off, front needle, you knit off, but there's no purl to do. And on the back needle, you purl off. Easy enough to do. And voila, my one sock is finished. All done. And I'm ready to go. Whoops. To pull up and start the second sock. I will strand my yarn onto my nice blunt needle like this, and I can do the second sock. Now remember when I told you to keep all of the little strands loose? Okay, there was a purpose to that. So look how sloppy this looks now. What you want to do is you want to put your hand in your sock so that you can use your hand to keep things tight. And starting at the very beginning of all of your stitches, the point of leaving it loose is that you can go back like this. See how nice and tidy that is now? And you can pull, use your needle, or you can use a little crochet hook if you have one. But you can use your needle, and now what you're going to do is you're going to slowly take each strand and tighten it up. See how you just take one, and what that does is you, one strand at a time, to tighten it up in a way that it matches the gauge of all the other stitches. And you'll find that you just, after a while, I end up just using my finger because I get enough of a tan, and I just kind of tug on each little section so that it looks like the next section. And the problem is, if you try to do this while you are actually weaving through, it's very hard to judge whether you've done it properly or not. So this way, see, look how absolutely invisible that starts to become because I'm able to judge exactly the way I want these stitches pulled tight. See? Now there I kind of need to get my finger in there a little bit. My needle stitch. There we go. See? And I pull that one tight so it looks like that one. Then I use my needle to catch the next strand, and I pull that one tight. Use the needle to catch the next strand. Pull that one tight. You know, I'm going to do another Kitchener stitch when I finish my green socks. It'll be a little easier to see, but I think you're still going to get the idea. See, look how nice that looks. You can't even tell that there's been an opening there at all. And all you do, I kind of find this is so magical to me that I love this part of the Kitchener stitch. All of a sudden it just comes together and no one can tell that you're actually woven. Look at that. It's absolutely gorgeous. And you still got all this sloppy stuff down here, but you just work your way through one at a time. Okay, just like this until you're all the way to the end. So I've worked all of my strands right to the other end of the toe. This is my last little bit to pull. See how absolutely gorgeous that is? You can't even tell that it was ever an opening. It's just magical, the Kitchener stitch. And if you remember that little rhyme, you know, front needle, so you knit off, purl through, and then purl off, knit through. And you just remember that, you won't have any trouble. And then, of course, go ahead and snip this yarn and just leave yourself 3 or 4 inches and take the yarn in to finish your sock, and you will be all ready to wear it. No worries.